Hey, family. I missed y'all last week. We are live. I am live on Facebook and YouTube. Join me on either platform, um, whichever is most convenient for you. I wanted to talk to you today about why should we even care about self-care? I know I have been talking about self-care for parent caregivers. So let me define parent caregivers because there are parents who are caregivers for their children who may have a disability or a mental disability that has them needing special care. I don't mean that parent caregiver. I mean the caregiver who is caring for a parent who is aging or ill. That's what I mean by that. And I decided to talk to you about this because this has been something that has been coming up in questions and comments. People maybe don't understand, why is it that I'm pressing so hard on this particular issue? Why do I keep saying I want you to take better care of yourself? So here's the rhyme or reason. I believe firmly that the parent and child relationship is one of the most precious relationships that we have on the planet, period. It's the first person if you happen to not be given up for adoption or anything. I'm not talking about extreme circumstances or unique circumstances. I'm talking about a traditional version of a parent and child relationship. That parent is the first person, you know mom, dad. They are in your life from the beginning, and that closeness that you have when you are a child, an infant, is so unique, unlike any other relationship that we'll have. You might have a close friend, you might have a someone who is an auntie, whatever. It's not the same as a parent-child relationship. So I am specifically focusing on parent and child relationships because the the sweetness that exists, in the beginning is what a lot of people lose towards the end. And the reason why I say that because caregiving becomes such a huge burden on the child or the children that you tend to lose your what's the word? You tend to lose your um why am I blanking? You lose that level of closeness, for lack of a better word. You lose the level of closeness or that intimacy. Thank you. The intimacy that you have throughout your life, it somehow gets challenged when you are caregiving for your mom or your dad, or sometimes both at the same time. Because the overwhelm, the stress, the feeling like you have to do it all, the anxiety, the pressure that comes from still having to do all the other things in your life that exist. Um, you might still be a parent. If you have children of your own, they might not be grown. You might still have them in the house and you still have to care for those children. That was my situation. When I was my mom and dad's caregiver, I still had a young child in the house. My son was 10 when I became my dad's caregiver, and 11 when from 11 to 14 when we cared for my mother. That relationship that he and I had became challenged because I was sometimes, before I learned to not focus so much on only mom or dad. So, what my point is in harping on making sure you take care of yourself is so that you can have the ability to maintain or at least reclaim what was sweet between you and your mom or dad. Like, think about it. When you were little, um, what were the things that you enjoyed doing with your mom, with your dad? Like, I remember we used to go. My mother would take me on Saturdays to the mall, and um, we might buy one little thing for me. It wasn't necessarily to go shopping, it was just spending time together. So we walk through the stores, look at clothes, maybe try on some stuff, maybe buy a few things. But the ultimate part was the end of and we walked to the end of the mall because it was this little teeny mall. Little teeny mall. It was just one, you walk down, you walk up. Okay. It was not huge like these malls are today. But you walk in one end and you go down to the other and then you go back so you can get back to your car. But we walked to that end, and at the end of the mall, there was a pizza place and an ice cream place, and we did both. And that was our time together. Like, we enjoyed going to the end. And even though my mother didn't eat pizza, she would sit there with me, watch me eat pizza, and then she would take me to the ice cream place and we would both get ice cream. Her favorite flavors were banana, and sometimes she would get rum raisin. Those were her two favorite flavors, without question. And I still eat rum raisin sometimes, just to kind of like channel that energy and have that moment to remember her. But those things, those times were special. Times that were special with me and my dad. Okay. A lot of people talk about my smile. And I'm like, yes, my parents paid dearly for this smile. Listen, y'all don't have any idea. I had braces for a long time. I had braces from the end of fourth grade all the way through the beginning of 10th grade. Like, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth. Ah! So 5+ years I had braces. And I got to my orthodontist appointments with my dad because it was way uptown. We would have to catch the metro and sometimes a bus to get to the dentist office, the orthodontist office. But that was our time together. And I remember, we would always do like riding a train and learning how to, figure out stuff to catch stuff. If it's too crowded, go one stop the other way and come back. Just little things that were nuances to our relationship that made our relationship special. Those are things that I remember endearing me to my parents. Fast forward all the way through life to me being an adult. If you're watching this on YouTube, you see the thumbnail picture is a picture of the three of us at my wedding. And it's because it shows that they were always there, always supportive, always with me during those special times. And that was no different. So when it came my turn to take care of my mom, to take care of my dad when they got older, that level of intimacy, that special feeling that I cherished with us started to dwindle, to be candid. Like, I was so maxed out riding back and forth from my house to my parents' house to the place where my dad was. If he wasn't, if he was in the hospital at that time, sometimes daddy was in the rehab facility, and running from all those places and still having to be present at home as a mom, as a daughter to my mother who was was now living by herself because dad wasn't there if he was in a facility. That was stressing me out. And what I'm hearing from a lot of you is that you are stressed out. You're trying to do everything yourself. And I keep saying, but why? Why? Why are you trying to do everything yourself? What is it about becoming your caregiver for your parent that makes you feel like you have to do it all? Why Is caring for yourself taboo? Why is it something that you consider to be out of the question? Like, absolutely no, I got to do everything. I can't ask anyone for help. What is it about that? So, after you answer that question, think about this. When you are stressed out, how fun of a person are you to be around? I mean, just think about it. You have friends, right? And suppose you and your girls are going out, right? And you want to have a good time. Y'all are thinking about, what you're going to wear, what you're going to, do when you get there, who's buying, all the things. You want to have a good time, right? But if you get there and you can't help but think about what's going on where you're not, you're stressed out and your brain is telling you you have to be focused on somewhere other than where you are. So that's why I'm stressing self-care. Self-care is getting people to step in for a small time frame. I don't mean when I say ask for help, people think I'm saying like get somebody else to do all your work. Now, if that's not something that you're capable of, that's not what I'm telling you to do. If that's not something you want to do, I'm not telling you to do that. But what I am saying is it's impossible for you to be there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And knowing that means that maybe there's a neighbor. Like if your parents are living in a separate space from where you are, maybe self-care looks like getting to know the neighbor who's in your parents' neighborhood and seeing, you know, if you can establish a relationship with that neighbor that will allow you to say sometimes, hey, do you mind if I call you every now and then and ask you to go and check on mom or dad? Or maybe they're already doing it and you just need to get that person's number so that you can keep in touch and they can help you keep an eye on mom or dad. If they live with you, getting help, self-care looks like asking your own neighbor. Your neighbor sees you going back and forth in and out of the house with your parent to a doctor's appointment, to the store, like whatever it is that you still do together. They see that. Maybe you could strike up a conversation one time, invite the neighbor over. A lot of people think that you might say, I don't want to invite people into my space because I got to make sure I take care, I keep mom safe, keep dad safe. Okay, discernment kicks in. This is when you have to say, God, who is supposed to be in my circle? I know it's not just me. You can't be the whole circle. Like, how is that possible? You you gotta have a way to, like, this is you trying to make the whole circle, and it's a whole gap that needs to be filled in, and it's probably bigger than that. You have a neighbor, you might have, if your parent goes to church, they could be people at the church who love your mom, who love your dad, and who would happily step in and help, who actually do a lot of things at the church. If you don't go to the same church as your mom and dad, go visit one day. Go visit the church and check it out and see who gravitates there. Get friendly with people. This is not an isolated time of your life. Like, this is the time where pushing away from people is to your detriment, because I'm going to tell you what saved me is my circle. The fact that I was building a circle. Some of you may or may not know, but what's today? April 11th. And my mom passed away on April 16th of last year. So I'm coming up on a year that since she's been out of my physical presence. But what I know for sure is that this time, in fact, tomorrow, 12th, April 12th is when I had to take her to the hospital. And I had no idea that was going to be the last place I'd take her. But going into that hospital, I had people around me I could immediately call. And, when I say, I remember I was on my way to celebrate a friend whose mom was getting ordained. And I wanted to go and support them. And I called and said, hey, I'm not going to be able to make it. I'm taking my mom to the hospital. And in the process of doing that, they immediately was like, okay, don't hesitate. Let us know what you need. You know why people show up for you? Because you show up for them. So self-care looks like tapping into the resources of people who you've been showing up for. Or sometimes it's not even the people you've been showing up for. Sometimes it looks like a completely different person who just happens to come along at the right time. Opening your mouth and saying, this is the situation. I don't know what to do. Do and then the person you happen to talk to might have an answer. The lady who helped me take care of my mom, who used to come over to the house and sit with her when I had to go to a job, or if I had to, go pick up my son or take my son somewhere. That woman is someone I met by chance, and I had been seeing her. She was a parent. She was a grandparent at my child's homeschool, my son's homeschool co-op, and we had to volunteer every year. We had to pick 7 volunteer days to be present in the homeschool community so that it ran smoothly. And I was there talking to this grandmom that one time, and she happened to ask me what I did for a living. And typically my answer was, oh, well, I'm a sign language interpreter, because I was doing that before I became a full-time caregiver for my mom. But at that moment, I answered, I'm a caregiver. And she said, oh, really? What's the facility? I work in a caregiving facility. I love doing that. What do you do? And I said, no, 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 no. I caregive for my mom at my house. That's my caregiving experience. And she said, oh, I would love to meet your mom. I can help you. Like, what do you need? What? Just like that. And I had just been talking to someone 30 minutes before that saying how I didn't know how I was going to make it. I was so stressed out. And 30 minutes later, God answered my prayer by me telling this woman I was a caregiver, and she offering to come help. She said, this is what we'll do. Next time you come and pick up your son, bring your mom with you, and I'll meet her. I'll come talk to you, and I'll come talk to her. And that was how it started. She met mommy, and we all sat there when it was pickup time and had conversation, and they got along great. And then I invited her over to the house. So why is it important that you care for yourself? Because when you care for yourself, you can get back to being the child in the relationship. When you are doing all the work and you become the caregiver solely, a lot of times you lose that feeling of being the child in the relationship. You might feel like there's nothing, the sweetness is gone. And you might feel like you have to try so hard to be, firm and make decisions, and you're always on, and it almost becomes, robotic. Like you are doing all of the things. And the more you do all of the things, the less you do the things that make you endeared to your parent. So you're so busy I got to make sure she's up, got to make sure she get dressed, got to make sure she eats. You don't sit down and actually have breakfast with her because you're so stressed out. So maybe caring for yourself looks like doing prep. Maybe it looks like cooking things in advance and sitting down and actually having a meal with the parent you're caring for. Maybe it looks like asking your children, hey, can you help out with the laundry? Some people are still trying to do everything. You're still trying to do all the laundry in the house. Teach your kids how to do the laundry. That's self care. Teach your kids how to do their own laundry so you don't have to do their laundry and your laundry and your parents' laundry. Do the small things because the small things oftentimes make the biggest difference. The big difference is now you can sit and enjoy a moment. You can take dad out for ice cream. That was y'all's thing when you were growing up. Or take, if dad wants to go out and just go for a ride. Like my dad and I loved crabs. And we would eat crabs and he would take forever to eat crabs. But, you know, before he became completely unable to walk, that was one of the last things I remember enjoying with him is we went out and we were on a search for some jumbo male crabs, riding all over the city, going from seafood place to see who had it. Yeah, calling would have been easier, but they don't always answer the phone. So we were going to all these places, but that was our time together. And I snapped a selfie and I remember I'm like, Daddy, and I have a picture of us in the car on that ride to go look for crabs. That's something that endeared me to him, made me feel like a kid again, even though I was doing the driving. So, what I'm saying is when you take moments and figure out how to just, even if you can just eh, decrease the stress by a little bit by admitting that you can't do it all by yourself. And instead of, like somebody's trying to help you, somebody at the restaurant, excuse me, you're at the restaurant together and you need to go to the restroom, but you're scared to leave your parent by themselves. Somebody at the next table, hey, excuse me, I hate to bother you, but would you mind just like, keeping an eye out for me? I know people think that everybody is out here mean and you can't trust people, but that's not the case. There are more people who are still good than evil. The thing is, the news makes it look like that's not the case. Thank you. And when you see people and God, you feel God prompting you to involve them, follow that. Don't let your pride or your fear of the environment, society, keep you from following what God is telling you to do and involving other people in your life so that caregiving doesn't wear you out. That's all I keep stressing. Caregiving should make your relationship with your mom or your dad more special, not stressful. Special, not stressful. So, if it's stressful, that means some kind of way we are missing what God is telling us to do because um not that everything is supposed to be easy, but that verse, my yoke is easy, my burden is light. So Jesus is saying, hey, take my yoke. I'll take that burden and you take mine because I don't have none. So if it's so stressful, there's something that we're not doing, something we're not tapping into to experience the grace that God has for us at this time in our lives. And if that grace is compromised, then the relationship between you and your mom or dad gets compromised as well. And that's what I don't want to see happen. I want to see the special beauty of the relationship evolve, even in a caregiving season, not diminish. So, um, I try not to do these lives too long. Been on here like 25 minutes. So I'm going to end right now. But again, make sure that your time with your mom and your dad is becoming more special and not more stressful. And if it's becoming more stressful, it's because you're not tapping in to what it is that God is creating, a beautiful moment that God is creating for you to have with your parent. I'm not blaming you. I know that sounds like I'm pointing the finger at you. I pointed the finger at myself first. I was missing the mark. I was the one who was trying to do it all. I was the one who was at my wits' end and then therefore not happy when I saw my mom, even though I was supposed to be taking care of her. How you take good care of somebody that you're frustrated when you see them? You can't do it. So you got to figure out a way to change the narrative and make it be less stressful and whatever by any means necessary. Asking a stranger, getting to know a stranger so that they're not a stranger, so that they can be helpful. Because the bottom line is, what is it that we're going to do if the time that the last years we have in our lives with our parents becomes the worst memory? Like, who wants that? You want it to be special. You want it to be loving. You want it to be memorable. And the only way for it to be that way is for you not to be stressed out of your mind. So taking care of yourself translates into taking better care of your parent, because when you take better care of you, you can give that energy, because energy is transferable. And if you aren't feeling you, they ain't gonna feel you either. And I'm gonna leave that right there. So thank you for joining. And I hope you all have a wonderful Saturday or whatever day of the week you happen to watch this video. Much love. Peace. Mm-mm.